Well, thank you so much, Carol, and thank you everyone for attending. Do we want to do a real quick? I'm Susan Marlowe, and I am the Director of Business Development for our Digital Center of Excellence at Stantec. I'm out of the Nashville office, and I have Catherine Osborne with me today as well, and we were going to do a presentation for you guys on our flood predictor product and the implementation of it in Tennessee. So we did have a similar meeting to this. I think it was last year sometime, but at that time we did not have the entire state already available. And so now we do have every county in the state of Tennessee is onboarded and has availability for flash flooding predictions. So Carol, do you think that we should just run through a real quick round of introductions and I'll let Catherine introduce herself, and then do you want to do that? Is that
Yeah,
good?
I think that should be a good idea. Yeah.
That way, at least we kind of have an idea of who the audience is,
Yeah.
and we can,
Yeah. That
make
you'll
sure.
get a better feel for it.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi there. I'm Catherine Osborne. I'm in our Lexington, Kentucky office. And my background is water resources engineering, H&H modeling, and I help support Susan and on our digital team. So pleased to meet everybody.
So Catherine, just let you take it away.
Yes. And I'm wondering, will the audio play with this video? Let me know. Can you all hear that? The water level went from ankle deep outside to thigh deep. And by the time I'm making my way
Yes.
into the attic, it's chest deep. It was then when it started to really hit me like I might not make it out of this. That's where I was able to make my way to the roof. Saw quickly that the house across the street, which was where my mom and dad were living, was up to the roof. And my mom was trapped in her home. That's when I hear the noise of a jet ski. And I flagged down them to come help me find my mom.
Tennessee are prone to flooding, but the flood that was experienced in Waverly was historic. On August 21st, 2021, the area around Waverly suffered historic levels of rainfall, some parts experiencing up to 20 inches of rain in 24 hours. This rainfall was concentrated on a very small area over a very short period of time, meaning major rivers in the area quickly grew and backed up into smaller local rivers and creeks, such as Trace Creek, which runs through the city of Waverly. Unfortunately, the creek was overwhelmed quickly and flooded into surrounding low-lying areas, with devastating consequences for lives and livelihoods in Waverly.
My name is Amanda Maples. I live in Waverly, Tennessee, and I've lived here almost my entire life. Living in Waverly's been amazing. The town and the community have always been supportive of each other. The flood actually impacted more than anybody could imagine. Over 500 homes were impacted. And for a small town like this, that is a massive hit. The people of our community came together like I've never seen before. Everybody felt the trauma together. So this is Trace Creek, kind of the start, but right in here is where it just completely gave way and washed all that out. So there was buildings there and everything. So this was the corner basically of like my road and my parents' road. And, you know, the day of the flood, basically that wall was gone. Our mailbox is gone. And then of course there's multiple houses missing now that used to be here. And it's gone. It's sad, really sad, because we had a lot of good memories here, and I can just remember my kids playing in the front yard, and we're grateful that we have our life, but like we were really happy here.
Stantec is a global leader in engineering, architecture, and environmental consulting. We work in areas such as mining, energy, transportation, architecture, and water resources. our engineers spend a lot of time producing flood risk models. We started to automate that engineering and make it more efficient, more effective. Our customers and our markets need to know about their flood risk before, during, and after a flood event. Flood Predictor is a machine learning technology trained on 30,000 hours of engineering that allows users to pull up a map and understand their flood risk. When you use Flood Predictor, you can see where the flooding will occur, the probability of that event, and also the depth of water at any given area, so you can take action. Flood Predictor uses data sets like land use, elevation models, stream center lines, and then applies the AI and ML to those layers in order to determine flood risk. With this information, communities can design infrastructure to reduce the risk of flooding. During an event, they can plan evacuations. They can respond to that event more efficiently and more effectively. And after an event, communities can use the data from Flood Predictor to document how and where they were impacted in order to recover.
In the future, Flood Predictor could help guide authorities as to where new homes and businesses could be built, and could help emergency services manage their flood response plans by allowing them to see and plan safe routes for the public and coordinate first responders to target rescue efforts in the most impacted areas. We always think about our largest cities being able to be on the bleeding edge, but a tool like this really brings parity to our smallest and most rural communities as well.
Waverly is a great place to live and raise your children. Waverly is always going to be what we're tethered to in our heart. My hope for Waverly is that we have the ability to protect our future, just to continue building as a community and a loving group of people.
Thank you all so much for allowing us to share that video quickly. I just think it really summarizes the work that we've done with Tennessee Economic and Community Development, and kind of the whole purpose around Flood Predictor. So I appreciate your attention with that. And I think in the invitation, we shared some of the objectives for today. Basically, we just want to share the functionality of Flood Predictor with you, and so that you're aware of the features and the data that is available. And then, as most of you, I'm sure, are keenly aware, we have seen increase in the intensity and the frequency and precipitation events over the last few decades. And within the last 15 years or so, there's been 78 flood-related deaths that have occurred in Tennessee, which is a high number. I was surprised when I put that data together. So Flood Predictor is ultimately supposed to help protect lives and to protect property and provide the most up-to-date information for planning, mitigation, response, and then resilience efforts. It's based on machine learning from FEMA risk map models that Stantec has created for that program. We have a 1D and a 2D model for flash flooding and riverine flooding that we use to train. So the flash flooding very much behaves like a 2D rain on grid model. And we're able to deliver geotiffs of probability, depth, and extent of flooding in any area in Tennessee. And, in normal time frame, we would be able to deliver a single watershed within about 30 minutes of a new scenario. But we've already populated most of the state with many scenarios, like the 1% annual chance flash flood risk. And this project was initiated by Tennessee Economic and Community Development under a resilience grant funded through HUD. And this was for the western portion of the state for about 6 counties, and really to help provide more up-to-date data. There's a lot of data, that's federally available that has been probably studied 10 years or more. And, that focus has been on the more populated areas of the state, in the central region. And so really helping to kind of create a canvas of up-to-date quality data for all decision makers, regardless of location. And this is just an example, some of the examples that we've done post-disaster of comparing the flood predictor outputs to actual satellite imagery from events. And this is the Waverly event. I'm sure many of you are aware of the large number of lives that were lost in this event. And the majority of those lives were lost due to driving on inundated roadways. And so you can see in this image, when you compare the flood predictor prediction, you can see where you have high probability, low probability, and high probability. You can see in that image that was flown the following day, the darkness on the roadways of where it was wet, dry, and then where that completely overtopped there, as well as the damage to the infrastructure shown as that high probability of flooding in that output. We also helped support during Hurricane Helene and ran several scenarios during that time. While we were actively responding, there was an area along I-40 that was experiencing some risk, and so we were running scenarios and noticed that the gauge around that area was actually not functioning, probably due to the velocity and the massive amount of rain. That gauge was probably washed away or damaged. And so the most upstream gauge was showing just under action stage. And so it was very difficult to determine where areas of risk might be along I-40. It's, a long stretch. And if you look at the FEMA floodplain, that's representative of the 1% annual chance riverine risk. So that's an isolated event. And the data really isn't available for what happens if we get 12 inches of rain, 17 inches of rain, in 24 hours. What is a map for that? And Flood Predictor can help supplement that data, as well as for your lower interval storms. And so you can see the Flood Predictor output for this area did show risk at several of the areas here of high probability and potential overtopping. And, there were several failures and mudslides and, areas of high velocity that completely washed some of those roadways away. So the disturbing part is that, there were people who were driving on these roads during this time. And so, having this data available on the front end so that you can be aware of what those risks might be and preemptively take action and send, people in the field for verification or monitoring. This is another area in Erwin, Tennessee, where a bridge collapsed. You can see, this overtopping here in this area showing high risk as well. And this is that hospital in Erwin, Tennessee that had to be evacuated. And this is our Riverine module here doing that comparison. And we selected sites that, were available, from the news and showed that comparison there. And we actually did just a quick damage assessment. So this is an area in Clyde, and we took the depth grid and intersected with the Bing building footprints and did just a quick damage assessment of, the highest depth intersecting those structures. So that is a capability, of course, if you export the depth grid. And, we really want to increase the user base and share this data set with as many as possible. So we really appreciate you attending today and allowing us to share this with you, because ultimately we hope that it is used, and especially used to save lives. And so with that, I will show you what it looks like. So this is our Tennessee portal for flood predictor. When you select the state, it populates all the counties. And so you can scroll to any county within Tennessee of interest, and you can access pre-populated scenarios. So I'll just go to Davidson because I'm familiar with Nashville. And so on the left-hand side, you can see all these scenarios that have been populated. We have anywhere from the 2-year to the 1,000-year flash flood event. And this is representing normal conditions, or that there is some capture within the watershed. We also have scenarios of runoff that have been populated. So if it's a saturated situation, if there's been several inches of rain over the past week or so, frozen ground, or if you're trying to just populate what's actively occurring, this is what that would look like. And so you can select any of these scenarios. That was that 10 inches of runoff. This is the 100-year flash flood event. And this will populate for the county. And this is, these areas here represent the Huck 12 watersheds. It's about 40 square miles or so. And that is our study area, our smallest study area. And users can select the base map just to help. I'll put grayscale just to help view this a little bit easier. But you, for any scenario, can look at the probability, the extent of flooding, which represents the probability of 50% or greater. So this is, a floodplain, if you will. And then the flood depth is assigned to that floodplain extent. And the depth is really useful because you can zoom in on an area and actually click on a cell, and it will give you that value. So if you wanted to know, what is the depth of flooding at a particular intersection over here, over 5 feet of depth are intersecting this highway. And so you can turn on satellite imagery or whatever base map is most helpful to your assessment. And then we also have other layers available to help if you're monitoring, such as NOAA watches and warnings, NOAA hurricane advisories, and then we have the gauge data as well as the FEMA floodplain. And so I'll turn it back again to grayscale. So, and zoom out just a little bit, and I'll turn it to extent. So you're looking at the FEMA 1% annual chance Riverine floodplain compared to our flash flood run. And so it's going to identify those areas outside of the special flood hazard area that are at risk for getting wet, and give you a whole new data set beyond, what you would traditionally have. And then you can look at, the BFEs of the FEMA effective data if you'd like as well. And so the NOAA watches and warnings, I don't believe there are any. Here we go in Kentucky. So you would just click on that instance there, and it will give you that information of, exactly which communities are affected and what it is. And if there is one within the county that you click on, it will give you a notification when you get on here. And then all scenarios can be exported directly to your local files. You can just select the watershed of interest, and if you want the probability, extent, depth, or water surface elevation. So that example of doing that preliminary damage assessment, we just exported the depth grid and ran it in GIS. So you can save these to your local drive as well, so that you have these available just in case of internet failure. And also you can create quick PDF maps, which is very useful if you're doing any planning exercises or storing data or sharing that data to maybe people who don't have access. So you would just select the scenario and then use this print function. So if you wanted to turn on satellite imagery, zoom in on a particular neighborhood, for example, and then this print feature will capture whatever is in your screen or your window. So you can create a quick report. And I'll do that now. And it usually takes about a minute or two. But it creates a PDF with a cover sheet of who printed this, and then the scenario details. So exactly what you're showing, as well as your map window with that legend. And then that will appear in your local downloads folder. And that would be another useful thing to also store, on your local drive, some PDF maps, just in case in an event or an emergency that you had those available, again, to that internet failure. But this is what it looks like when it's complete. So who ran it and when, exactly what you're showing, that map, and then a list of exactly what you're showing with that scenario. So with this particular scenario, we ran all the watersheds within Davidson County. And so because these are calculated on an individual watershed, that's why you're seeing some variation along there. So we've tried to analyze, at a very small study area to really help keep that accuracy and that quality. And then when we compare Flood Predictor to models of areas that have been untrained, we're able to replicate that within 87 to 98%. So very high correlation to traditional methods, whereas this method, is very quick. And so if you wanted to initiate a scenario of your own, you would just close out of one that you had open and hit add new simulation. You can do a custom simulation. So any recurrence interval, although we populated these for Davidson County, but from 1 to 1,000. Any rainfall amount from 1 to 29 inches, representing normal conditions, and any runoff amount from 0.1 to 30 inches. The only caveat with using this is that it must have at least 1/10 of an inch of runoff generated in order to run. So some of your very low intervals or very low storm events may not always populate. And it'll give you, like, that watershed might gray out, and it will tell you that, not enough runoff was generated in the model to be able to create an output. And then the live function is great when you're analyzing a storm within the next 24 hours. It's going to pull that forecasted rainfall. So those inches of rainfall over the 24 hours from the time that you initiate that scenario. So you have the selection of one single watershed, multiple watersheds, or all of the watersheds. And then you can select whether you would like to input the global forecast system forecast or the HRRR forecast. And there is a little bit of variation with those. So we provided both of those options. And then if you're doing a custom scenario, you can actually type in that amount. So if you're looking at a forecast with significant range over the entire county, you can run that max and that min here. So you would just type it in. We could do 5 inches of runoff. I'll do test and then run simulation. And so that will actually kick off and initiate and then provide an email when that run is complete, and then we'll populate in that left-hand bar. And the good thing is only you, the person who initiated it, can delete or rename that scenario. So you don't have somebody coming in and deleting it, but everyone who has access will be able to see, so that you don't have everyone logging in and trying to run the same scenarios at the same time. You can actually benefit from those pre-populated scenarios and saved scenarios, so that you don't have to sit here and wait for it to run. But if you are running something specific, for planning or for an actual event, it's very helpful to be able to do this. And so it'll let you know once that's initiated and return that result. Depending on how many watersheds are run, in about 30 minutes per watershed. So since I selected the entire county, it might be about an hour before I would get that result back. And so it says that it's running, and an email will be sent when that's complete. And I believe that, yeah, that is all I had to share with you. Susan, is there anything that you would like to add before I take questions?
Yeah, there are some questions in the chat.
Oh,
So
great.
one thing that you might want to do, Catherine, is go to Cott County, because someone said, did you all have a chance to compare post-disaster imagery for the city of Newport, Cott County, to the flood predictor model output? Just curious if the output performs better than FEMA's effective data in that location. Keep in mind, we did run that scenario, and I think it's, if you go to Cott County, it's going to be in there, Catherine, that 12 inches of rainfall
Okay.
in those watersheds, the one that was that you were showing.
Mhm.
So we did run the 12 inches of rainfall, and that is the one of the slides that Catherine showed you, was the 12 inches of rainfall and that area of the I-40 that was showing as overtopping. But keep in mind that the FEMA effective maps are Riverine, primarily Riverine, and what you're looking at is the flash flooding model. So we focused on flash flooding first because FEMA doesn't have that. Very few areas have the flash flooding information, and so we focused on flash flooding first. Our Riverine model is coming out hopefully this first quarter of this year. So hopefully that'll be available by the end of this quarter. So is that simulation still there, Catherine?
Yes, this is what I'm sharing right now. It's 12 inches of runoff for the entire county to simulate that hurricane event, and then we can turn on the FEMA floodplain. You do have to zoom in a little bit tighter to get that FEMA floodplain to draw, but just to show comparison of the data set that you would have available, this is going to include the entire watershed and assess that entire watershed similar to a 2D model, so that you can identify these areas that are at risk that are not identified by that Riverine FEMA floodplain.
So did that answer your question, Emily?
Yes, it did. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. I forgot in asking the question that you had already highlighted the difference between riverine and flash flood scenarios, and that's really a lot of the value of what this tool brings. I'm just getting excited to share with my coworkers about this. So thank you so much for answering the question.
Oh yeah, no problem. And then here's another one. What hydraulic methodology does Flood Predictor use? Regression equations, question mark.
Yes, yes. We're calculating the curve number method using Atlas 14 for those individual watersheds, and then really calculating that hydrology. And then the machine learning is trained on the outputs and the inputs of traditional modeling. So we've trained it with a wide variety of data sets. So then for certain conditions and landscapes, then that machine learning model is then going to infer where those areas of flooding are. But it is using the USGS DEM, that latest DEM there, and we use nationally available data sets, and then we evaluate those on an annual basis if they need to be rerun. Or some of our feature releases require updates, and we're constantly adding new features. And Emily, I'm so glad you brought up Riverine. We will be adding Riverine in the beginning of this year. And so you will have the choice to run a flash scenario or a Riverine scenario. And the live Riverine scenario will allow you to do like a 6-hour, 12-hour, 1-day, 5-day outlook, and then access historical scenarios. So in this case, you could actually run the Hurricane Helene event. You would just put a start and end date, and then say, what would that map look like of that event, and it will pull data from the national water model, that flow data, to input into the Riverine model.
Here's another question. Well, first of all, did that answer your question, Shane?
Yes, I have another one though later.
Okay,
Um,
go for it.
well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I missed it. So is this system available to anybody in the state, or is it a subscription service, or how do you access it?
Well, right now, that's a great question. Right now, the state of Tennessee Economic and Community Development paid for 6 counties in West Tennessee to be made available to those 6 counties. And we then, Stantec, went ahead and did the rest of the state because we wanted to have a statewide implementation that we could show to people because water doesn't just run from county to county, as we all know. And so we went ahead and did the rest of the state. And our goal right now, our contract with ECD will end in 2025, and our goal is to get the state of Tennessee to fund the entire state so that every community official can have it available to them. And we're asking the state for a 5 cents. It's based on population, 5 cents a person, and that's like $300,000, which would give full state access and full community access with unlimited simulations and unlimited downloads and that sort of thing. Last year we tried to get it funded, and the legislature did not fund it last year. But we were asking for a lot more money last year because we had not onboarded the entire state. So what we are doing right now is communities that are outside of that area, if they're really small communities, we're basically giving it to them for free. And if they're larger communities, like Knox County signed up, and they paid $2,500 for a year's access. So anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 would be the most any community would pay. And the smaller ones were based, like a Cott County, for instance, where the population is so small, we've just allowed free access at least till the end of our contract runs out with ECD. One of the things that would be most helpful, honestly, is, and we're happy to bring you on as a user and see how you like it and that sort of thing. One of the things that would be most beneficial is if TEMA heard from you guys, hey, we need this. This is something you guys are going to do this, right? I know that TEMA's asked for funding, but I don't know that it includes. I don't know for sure that it includes Flood Predictor. I know they want the Mesonet system. And so I've been in touch with Director Sheehan, but I haven't heard back yet. But I've even talked to ECD and TDOT and TDEC and TEMA to go in together. If those 4 agencies would go in together, it would be $75,000 for each agency, which in the state, in the whole scheme of things, in a statewide budget, that's pretty for the value, I feel like it's a pretty good investment for the value that they have, or that the communities could have, and that the whole state could have actually.
Yeah, we're actually under a aerial flood watch right now here in Gibson County.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Let's turn on the thing, Catherine. Let's go to Gibson County.
How, do you know how much rainfall you're supposed to get?
Possibly 4 inches or whatever.
Oh, great. Okay.
Let's see if the NOAA watches come on for Gibson County.
Oh, it's on.
Oh, yeah, it's on. There we go.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, it's on for several counties, looks like.
So this 1% annual chance, you can look here and you can see what's the range across the entire county. It's 4 to 6 inches in normal conditions. So this is the scenario I would use to look at right now. And then you could also run either a custom or a live of exactly what that forecast is that you're receiving. And is there an area that you would like me to zoom into? And that yellow popping up is that watches and warning layer from NOAA. So I'll pop that off, and we can turn on satellite imagery. And there's a search bar up here, so you can type in an address.
So the 4 to 6 inches of rain, what storm event does that equate to, or does it tell you that, or?
It does, yes. That's for the 1% annual chance. And
Is that like still 100-year flood?
Mm-hmm.
yes, you can see right here, it'll list the recurrence interval,
Okay.
what percent annual chance that is. So you, in your custom scenarios, you can run any recurrence interval from 1 to 1,000 year. And then you can also run, specific rainfall or runoff amounts, or you can run pulling that rainfall directly from live weather.
So then, like you were showing, you can zoom into any road and see how high the water gets over a road.
Exactly. So you would want to turn on the depth grid and then click on that value at that particular crossing, and you would get, what that expected depth is. So looks like there's a little area here on this highway that is going to get significantly wet there. So you can, click on these values here
Okay,
and see.
it's very neat.
Yes,
What is that depth right there, Catherine?
2 to 3 feet along Bradford Highway. So I'd love to know if that's what happens.
Well, I hope it doesn't get that bad.
Yes, I mean, I hope it doesn't. But if you do get 4 inches, if you have any data that you collect and you would like to compare it, or photos, we'd love that opportunity to verify this data set.
Okay.
I mean, at the moment, what we're really, really wanting to do is to get adoption, that people would use it and give us feedback. Tennessee was one of our first customers. ECD was one of our first customers. They saw the value of it, and we've, like I said, been showing it to multiple state agencies, and I appreciate you guys giving us a chance to show it to you today. But if any of you are interested in getting access, we can definitely get you some access. And we were in Knox County last week training.
Mhm.
And the week before that, we were in West Tennessee and did some hands-on training in West Tennessee.
And
So,
then, yes, I just wanted to point out, that 1% annual chance is applied to the entire watershed. So each calculation is different. So this particular watershed is saying that it would be 3 feet for 5.81 inches of runoff. So if the ground's already wet, or 8 inches of rainfall in normal conditions. So it's a little bit more than probably what you're looking for. But you can always run that custom scenario for this particular watershed of 4 inches. I'm following the chat, and Joel asked, are we using 3-depth? Not yet. We're using the USGS 10-meter DEM currently, but as soon as 3-depth is available nationwide, we will certainly apply that to our model. And if we were to get funding to upgrade the DEM for the state of Tennessee, we can certainly do that. We think that about 3 meters is probably our sweet spot to be able to maintain the speed, but give you a finer resolution. We can do very fine resolution. It'll just take a little bit longer to run.
Did that answer your question, Joel?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then Emily asked about Knox County. So that $2,500 is an annual fee. So they will have access for an entire year. And we do offer, support at any time. And then we did just go down there last week and do training. So we will do in-person training as well. But if you are using this and have issues, you can always submit a help ticket here. We have frequently asked questions here. So, here's one that we have available. What is a HUC? What's a recurrence interval? That kind of thing. But you can actually submit a ticket here. And do you want to add a new area of interest? Let's say you're looking at the county and the watersheds that intersect it, and you wanted to add an additional watershed, you could click this one. But if you're having any kind of issue, like login or something like that, you can always do a ticket. So we're pretty prompt on responding. And then, of course, we make ourselves available as well. So you can email or call me. Knox County last week, there were several people who couldn't attend. So I got a few emails that, hey, please add me. And we do unlimited access. So as many people in the community that entity in Knox County, it was the county that actually paid for it. So they selected, that the staff that they wanted to make that available for. So they included Knox County Emergency Management and some of the planning folks as well. Did you have anything else, Emily?
No, I'm furiously typing away. This is all perfect.
Good,
But
good.
yeah, thank you so much for the clarification.
Of course, yes.
Do we have any other questions? Or an area that somebody wants to see specifically?
Yeah, this is Sean with Tipton County, and I hate to say this, but this is the first time that I've heard of this tool, and apparently I was part of the original pilot.
You were.
So I'm the GIS director, and we've got a planning director who's also a CFM. So I'm just curious to see who this was shared with and how long we've actually supposedly have access to this.
Well, you have access till our contract runs out with ECD this year, which I think is in September, of this year. But if the state funds it, then you'll have access through state funding. And the whole, it'll be for the amount of time that the state will fund it.
Okay.
You have access to it right now. If you just, any of you that are on the phone, if you will just send us your email address, we will get you guys access to it. And when I say you have access, you basically have access to the entire state. So not just the community that you're in, it's because we have this as a statewide portal, you would have access to any area in the state. So if you're in an adjoining county, you see what's going on, and you need to run something in two different counties, you can do that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or any comments or anything else we can answer for you guys?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. Does this also show urban flooding, or is that too high res for the depth grids?
Well, it is going to show it.
Okay.
And we have done some training with urban communities. One of the future features that we're looking at is identifying the stormwater extent that you have, the infrastructure in your community, so that it can filter out for that stormwater capacity. But right now, it's not filtering that out.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just showing surface level flooding. But we, as Susan was saying, we plan to add a feature to factor that in. So you could just type in your capacity. It would do a simple subtraction for you.
Okay.
But a lot of the events, you know, that are being utilized are those higher events, and so a lot of our users are pleased that it doesn't, because you know, in a lot of those cases, you know, that would not function.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
And I would just add, while we're waiting for someone to give us a question, you know, we really stress to our communities to try to populate the scenario window over here, so that when you're looking at upcoming events, that you have that readily available, and are not trying to, you know, run a bunch of scenarios at the time of the event. And then might experience, you know, having to wait for that scenario to complete. We really want you to log in and use it, and have a good library of scenarios that you can access and use. And that way you're familiar with it, know how to use it before an actual event hits. And we've just seen that in the past where, you know, they may have just tried to log on and, oh, their login doesn't work, and it's, you know, during an event. So we just want to be sure that, you know, people access it ahead of time and look at it, and maybe run a scenario or two so that that's available for them.
Oh, they just asked who do they send their email to, and a lot of them are just putting their email in the chat, which is fine. We can get it from that. If you want to just put it in the chat, we can do that. But mine and Catherine's emails are, mine is susan.marlowe@stantec, stantec.com. And Catherine's is catherine.osborne@stantec.com.
I'll type that in the chat. And then I think I might have it available here.
We can also make this presentation and this recording available to you as well. Right, Carol?
Yes, it'll be after this presentation's over, it'll be on our website as well. I think that's what, Wes, isn't that what you said you were gonna do?
Yes, yeah, it should be available. I'm gonna put it on the website by tomorrow, as well as the slides and all the resources we have today. So yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Wes.
You're welcome.
Can you talk a little more on how to use it for damage assessment?
Yes. So I think this example here is a good one. So what we did in the Helene example is ran that scenario. So this, I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's 12 inches of rainfall here in Clyde. And so we have this depth grid. And so in the portal, what I've done is I would go let's pretend that's an area that you want, and export the depth grid. So for whichever watershed you're interested in, you would just select depth geotiff and download that. And then you can bring it into GIS. And so what we've done in this example is intersected that depth grid with building footprints. And so it was just a GIS analyses that you can run. And so it will intersect with the highest depth, and then it is populated here for that. So I don't think the legend is on this, but I believe that red was 5 feet or higher of flooding. And you can see that is consistent here. This little area, you can see these structures here within that 5 feet are red. And so we just symbolized the building footprints that intersect the depth grid at those different depths. I think there's 1 to 5 feet, 1 or less, between 1 and 2, and so on. And so this would be very helpful post-disaster when you're trying to apply to funding, that you have these depth grids of the event, because as we've seen in Helene and a lot of these significant rainfall events, that's occurring outside of the special flood hazard area. So you have a mapped output that you can utilize to justify what funding you might be requesting, or help prioritize your response. Which areas do you need to focus on, or which have received the most damage, and do those preliminary damage assessments, just from your desktop. Of course, a lot of more details needed throughout the post-disaster response, but this is a good first pass.
Did that answer your question? Shane asked another question. Does FEMA update mapping based on the predictor modeling? Not at the moment. At the moment, FEMA is doing nothing but the traditional physics-based modeling, and that's why Flood Predictor is so valuable, because like in Tennessee, some of the flooding, the FEMA maps, some of them are 20 and 30 years old in some areas. And so, it's better in the Nashville area where we had the 2000, a lot of attention in the 2010 flooding, but and especially in East Tennessee, it's really old.
But there's no reason that a community couldn't use this data set as best available data, especially for those areas outside of the special flood hazard area, to help inform, development, or, any of that planning on the front end. We have a lot of use cases where we've run scenarios in areas that are unmapped of, site development or site selection, location prioritization based on flood risk.
And I guess for those of you that may not know, that physics-based modeling is very time-consuming and it's very expensive. So, Catherine could give you probably an example of we do tons of it, and still do an amazing amount of work for FEMA on their FEMA risk map program. But
sure. Yes. For, if you're looking at, a larger watershed, like a Huck 8 watershed, that hydrology and hydraulics analysis usually takes 9 to 12 months. If we were to run Flood Predictor, we could do it in a day, just to give you that comparison.
Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're at 2:00. So we are available to answer, excuse me, we're available to answer any questions that come up that you may not have thought of yet, but once you start, if you go back and look at it or you share it with someone else and they have questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We're happy to do anything we can.